Hello students, welcome back to our discussion of Chapter 9. We're talking about the second function of the foreign exchange market. We're talking about the spot exchange rate, a foreign exchange rate, and now something that's called a currency swap. Basically, a currency swap is a business or a firm that is simultaneously buying and selling a given amount from a foreign business. So they could enter into a current spot exchange rate for the selling of the product, and then when they're buying the product, a different finished product back, they could engage in foreign exchange rate, a future rate based on when the deal is going to be completed. So there's a really good example of that in the textbook on page 321. Basically, that example is more than we need for the purpose of this course. So just understanding that currency swap is a business that is both buying and selling, and they can enter into a spot exchange for one of the ends of the transaction, a future exchange rate based on the other end of the transaction. Textbook goes into some of the key money trading centers. So here they are, and some secondary trading centers. And I guess the textbook really doesn't like anything to do with Toronto, so that's great. Big part of this chapter is the purchasing price parity, triple P, the theory, and the proposition of the law of one price. This helps to help us understand the relationship between price and the exchange rate, price on various products, goods and services, and in different markets, foreign markets, and the connection or dependency it has or influence it has on exchange rates. So the law of one price, as it says, it's basically a proposition that states that in markets, competitive markets, with the big assumption or understanding that there's no transportation costs and there's no barriers to trade, tariffs, etc. So basically you can send you can buy one product from one market, and you can go into Europe and buy that same product in a different market because there's no transportation costs and there's no barriers to trade. The example, the belief is that because they're competitive markets, free of transportation costs, no barriers to trade, identical products sold in different countries must sell for the same price when expressed in terms of the same currency. There's an example in your textbook, but the math is wrong, so we'll kind of go over it more detail here. But let's say there's a jacket. I think the example in the textbook talks about jackets. It sells for, in the US, it sells for $75. And in the UK, what should it sell for in the UK? So the exchange rate between the US and UK is £1 equals $2 US. Therefore, the jacket in the UK should cost about $37.50, or 37.5 pounds. If the jacket costs 30 pounds, which is the same as $60 US, it would be profitable to buy jackets in the UK and sell them in the US. Of course, the big assumption is no transportation costs or trade barriers, so you could probably do that instantaneously. So it would be beneficial for you to buy that jacket where it's actually cheaper, bring it to the US, and you could make some money. However, what this would cause, short run, and definitely in the long run, is that there would be an increased demand in the UK and an increased supply in the US of these jackets. This would cause an increase in price in the UK and a decrease of price in the US. So prices would stabilize because of the invisible hand of the market. Price would stabilize somewhere in the middle. But this does show how prices are influenced by the exchange rates. Assuming, of course, that there's no transportation costs and no barriers to trade. Now, with those transportation costs and barriers, it does create a little more difficult in terms of trying to understand the relationship between prices and exchange rates. But the law of one price leads into the purchasing price parity, the triple P. So if the law of one price were true for all goods and services, the purchasing price parity exchange rate could be found from any individual set of prices. By comparing the prices of identical markets in different countries, it would be possible to determine the exchange rate. Exchange rates could or should change when prices change. There's another example we can look at. Let's just make sure. Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to bring up this example and then bring up some history of that as well. So economists back mid-80s, I believe, came up with what he has found, the Big Mac Index. And I'll bring up an article about that as well. But the Big Mac Index was invented by an economist in 1986 as a lighthearted guide to whether currencies are at their correct level. It is based on the theory of purchasing power parity, purchasing price parity. The notion that in the long run exchange rates should move towards the rate that would equalize the prices of an identical basket of goods and services. In this case, as it says, he's using the Big Mac, basically finding out what does a Big Mac cost in various countries in their currency, what is the exchange rate, the current exchange rate, and what does that say about the how much a Big Mac should cost in those countries, and then stating whether or not the currency is overvalued or undervalued. So he found, this is as of June 2020, that the British pound is 25% undervalued. Now, I wouldn't make a run to the bank to try to buy some British pounds, assuming that or thinking that the British pound should increase in value based on this rather simple index, the Big Mac Index. But it does give us an idea of currencies and their relationship to price. In Canada, basically, Canadian dollar is undervalued as well, basically saying that the Canadian price for a Big Mac is overvalued compared to the U.S. price. So here's a Big Mac index on Wikipedia, basically showing the 6 most expensive places to buy Big Mac. Switzerland and Sweden, very expensive. The cheapest places, Taiwan, Indonesia. So with the law of one price, what this would state is you should go to Taiwan, buy Big Mac for $2.27, go into Switzerland and sell it for anything less than $6.57, and you could make $4 easy dollars. But assuming that there's no transportation costs, which we know there are, and there might be someone at the border stopping you from bringing in old Big Macs. So that is the purchasing power parity. This theory, or the purchasing price theory, predicts the changes in prices that will result in a change in exchange rates. So money supply and price inflation. Predicting, so what we can do, economists can do, is they can use the level of inflation, and that could lead to predicting exchange rates. If the money supply is increased, say there's more money in the economy, inflation increases, the exchange rate should in theory, decrease in value. So a couple principles and theories to have generally a basic understanding of what they refer to. The efficient market school and the inefficient market school. Basically, these are two opposing views on forecasting the exchange rate. The efficient market school basically argues that the forward exchange rates, which we saw in the last video with Royal Bank of Canada, basically they do their best possible job of forecasting those exchange rates. They use all possible market players, collective, who have inputted their collective or inputted their prediction. So it's a collective prediction of likely spot exchanges in the future. It basically includes all available information. So these are kind of market forces. Whereas the inefficient market school argues that the companies can improve the foreign exchange market estimate of or prediction of future exchange rates by using various forecasting services. It's a belief that price changes do not reflect all available information. So the efficient market school train of thought looks at price as being the dominant determining factor in an exchange rate, whereas inefficient market school would believe that there's other things other than price. The track record of professional forecasting services is not good, as the textbook says. So we'll come back and we'll finish the last few slides about the different approaches to forecasting. And that's the last little bit that we'll finish on.